Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. I'm going to be building a replica of an ancient Sumerian lyre. Let's get started. Alright, the aims of this experiment is to replicate an ancient Sumerian lyre, specifically the Silver Lyre of Ur, and detail the processes involved. I want to find out what the instrument would have sounded like, and if replicating such an instrument can help us better understand the culture who built them. So experiments like this one can help archaeologists identify telltale components and discarded waste of such instruments within archaeological remains and assemblages. The ancient Sumerians loved building lyres. So do I. Let's have a look at some of their lyre building habits of the past. So here are a few pictures of the lyre. On the left, it's just like a model of it, I guess. In the top right, that's how it was found when it was excavated. So it was squashed flat, and all that remained was the silver. The wood had all degraded. Cool. So archaeologist Leonard Woolley led the team that discovered the instruments as part of his excavation of the Royal Cemetery of Ur from 1922 to 1934. They are considered to be the world's oldest surviving string instruments, all being over 4,500 years old. So the Silver Lyre of Ur was found in the Great Death Pit, one of the graves in the Royal Cemetery at Ur. The burial in the Great Death Pit was accompanied by 74 bodies, 6 men and 68 women, laid down in rows on the floor of the pit. 3 lyres in total were piled on top of one another. They were all made from wood which had decayed by the time they were excavated, but 2 of them, one of which is the Silver Lyre, were entirely covered in sheet silver, fixed in place with silver nails. Let's have a look at the rationale. Efforts to replicate this lyre have been few and far between. While I was researching the lyres of Ur, I was only able to find one detailed case of replication. It's an important process in understanding why they built them as they did, their potential cultural significance, and to help archaeologists interpret future assemblages in which similar instruments may be present, whether in parts or whole. Furthermore, almost nothing is known about what these instruments would have sounded like. Likewise, the building process isn't too clear itself. In doing this experiment, I hope to shed some light on these questions, and being a guitar player myself, this was my main reason for doing this experiment, to see if I could build one myself. Let's have a look at the methods. Okay, so in this experiment, I tried to use as little resources as possible to make it as authentic as possible. So I used a simple hammer, a simple saw, some wood glue, nails, 2 sheets of steel, some timber for the frame, bamboo for the beam at the top where the strings are supported, some leather strips to fix various things in place, and nylon guitar strings, which is the closest modern equivalent to traditional gut strings. All tools and materials I used in building this replica were available in some way to the Sumerians 4,500 years ago. While I obviously had to use modern equivalents due to my time constraints and funding, I tried to control the variables as much as possible. So this is just a short clip of me starting to build the frame. I'm using normal nails. The Sumerians used small silver nails, but obviously that's not possible, so I just bought some nails from. And here is the completed frame after I had nailed all the nails in. That's the sound box. This is me nailing in the steel plates that will resonate. I use steel because it has a similar rigidity to silver and also a very high specific gravity, similar to silver. Here I'm showing the arms being put on. So I put 3 pieces of wood, nailed them together, and then cut an angle into them so they would sit off-center just like the original lyre. That's me showing you where I'm about to cut it. This is just a quick clip of me sawing that angle on. So after I cut them out, I fixed them on with wood glue and just used a bit of duct tape to hold them in place while the glue sets. As you'll see in a second, they sit nice and angled just like they did on the original lyre. So here's the piece of dowel that I'm going to use to make my tuning pegs. I marked them up into 12 centimeter pieces and sawed them out. Next, I got the piece of bamboo that's going to hold the tuning pegs and the strings, and I just cut out some little gaps, and that's where the tuning pegs will sit after I saw them out. Here I'm simply cutting out the divots where the tuning pegs will sit, just with an angle at the saw, and that's the finished product. So I just slide in there, and yeah. Here is a bridge I built. It was just, I cut a thin strip of bamboo and then just used some wood glue to fix some little legs on it, and yeah. And this is the divots I cut for the bamboo beam to sit on, which will hold the strings. There it is glued on. It's just a simple piece of bamboo. That's the one with the divots in the back for the tuning pegs, and there's my bridge also glued on with some glue. This is the tail piece I used, so it's just a tiny piece of bamboo, and that's the finished product. I just put all the strings on it, and I'll show you in a sec how it'll be tied on. But first, we need to attach the tuning pegs on, and for that we just use some wet leather. I have my mate helping me here because it was a bit of a two-man job. So you just wrap it around, tie it as tight as you can. Here is my tailpiece after it's dried. So that sits on the two nails that I nailed into there, and then uses the tension of the strings to hold it into place. Here we are stringing it up, so simply wrapping the strings around the tuning pegs, and then using a pair of pliers or your hands, if you're strong enough, to tighten them up, and they actually held true quite well. And there's the finished product. I trimmed the leather off after I did this, but we'll see that in the results section. It looks pretty good. Let's have a look at some results. Okay, so here is the completed lyre, mine on the right and the original on the left. So obviously mine isn't nearly as intricate and ornate as the one on the left. It also has 6 strings instead of, I think, 11 the other one has, but it's pretty close, and it definitely resonates. Here's a clip of me playing it. So as you just heard, the replica works. It resonates quite nicely and had no structural failures at any stages of building. While it obviously isn't a perfect replica by any means, it gives us quite a good insight into the building process, sound, look and feel of the instrument. So overall, I think that was a success. Let's discuss.
Oh yeah, great shot, mate.
Okay, so one thing I found very interesting was the almost modern tuning pegs and bridge they employed in their building. It's worth noting that the tuning pegs for the strings are lashed to the yoke in a permanent vertical parallel arrangement. In order to tune a string, all you have to do is turn the peg in position to tighten or loosen the tension. They were not forced backward or forward in an orbit around the yoke, like the pegs of certain African lyres, most notably the Ethiopian Begana. The advantage of the Sumerian system, which is basically the same as we use today on Western stringed instruments, is that the peg does not interfere with the string in any way. Furthermore, the metal resonator not only makes for a louder instrument, but is extremely durable evidence. Sumerian lyres often also included silver or other metal tuning pegs, which are a fantastic indicator of an instrument within archaeological remains and assemblages. The replication of this lyre led to a much better understanding of the manufacturing process, and further, what the instrument, and music for that matter, would have sounded like in ancient Sumeria over 4,500 years ago. Due to the ornate and intricate nature of the instruments and their inclusion within the royal burial chambers of Ur, they must have held a huge cultural significance, most likely used in ceremonies and rituals. So in conclusion, the experiment was a success. I managed to replicate a Silver Lyre of Ur, and nothing really impeded my success at all. The instrument resonates beautifully and hasn't had any structural failures. Next time, if I was to improve my experiment, I would probably build a full-scale replica and ideally use silver, but due to the cost, skill level, and time, I did not have that as an option at all this time. I found that it's quite easy, given a few days and some simple tools, to replicate one of these, and for it to turn out to not sound too bad. The metal used makes it louder and helps it endure thousands and thousands of years in the ground, and allows us to know about the existence of this instrument and be able to replicate it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video.